What's up, Laura?
Hey,
Welcome to the Deadlifts and Pizza podcast.
how you doing?
I'm good. It's morning for me, so I'm happy to podcast in the morning.
Yeah.
How are you?
Good.
How was your
It's
day?
either good. It's all right. Just
Okay.
an average Tuesday.
Run of the
Nothing
mill.
special. Yeah. He's probably home now, maybe? I don't know. He was at football practice.
Cool.
Yeah, so just, whatever.
Any more touchdowns?
Nope. Well, he hasn't had a game since then.
Okay.
Yeah. That was exciting.
That's cool. That's cool. Camila quit Taekwondo yesterday.
Aw.
That's a bit of a bummer.
She didn't like it?
Yeah, the master's she's a very sensitive and emotional child. And the master's very he's hard on them, but he's also kind of sarcastic and jokey and it's just all around. She just doesn't love the way she feels. She likes real soft, fluffy butterfly type of people. And so we had to have a lot of conversations about how you're going to have teachers and coaches that you can't always just leave. So, but ultimately also she just doesn't love the sport. Letting your kid quit or not is definitely a thing. And it's just a balance because you want them to push through, but also Taekwondo isn't the type of sport where you have seasons, or it's not your team's not relying on you. There's none of those things that you can kind of pull out, but you also don't want your kid to just quit. So it's kind of evaluating, but she's not typically somebody who just quits. And we know that that's not really her thing. We're glad she got a few skills, and we're glad that she engaged in it because she was sparring boys, and she was outside of her comfort zone. But ultimately, if it's going to be a fight every single Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, then it's just not worth it. Oh, and so then the other thing we came up with, I heard this from a fellow parent because I was talking to her about it. And she was like, our rule is that if our kids want to quit a sport, they have to be the one to tell their coach or their whoever, because they can't just not show up, and mommy and daddy aren't going to do it for them. They committed to it and they have to tell them. So I liked that because I was like, yeah, I wouldn't just not show up and take the easy way out. I would talk to him and be like, hey, I'm so sorry. So we made her tell him, and that actually worked really well because she ended up deciding to write him a letter and then hand it to him so he could read it. And just the way that she explained everything, we talked about the parts of a letter, and she still had to go through his response and how to deal with that. So it was ultimately a good thing, but I'm a little bummed selfishly.
I think it's okay to let your kids quit things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do, because they need to find what they enjoy, and forcing them to do something that they're not enjoying. I don't think there's really a huge lesson in that except to follow through. If you're in the middle of a season, maybe you stick out the season. But like you said, with that, there isn't really a season. Because in life, if you have a job and you hate it, I wouldn't advise you to stay there forever. Yeah. Just stay there for the commitment of whatever, give them 2 weeks, that kind of thing. And then find the thing that you like. Don't just do things because, I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. But then when I look back at my own childhood, I was in soccer from the time I was 5 to the time I was literally a freshman in high school is when I finally stopped. And I never really wanted to be in soccer. The only reason I continued to do it was because my parents forced me to. They signed me up every year. And I was that kid that would be picking flowers or pretending their ankle was hurt or having a stomach ache. I never wanted to be there. I never wanted to sign up. And by the time I got to middle school, I started having other friends that also signed up, my best girlfriends, and we would always be on the same team. So at that point, it was a little easier for my mom because it was just naturally embedded in our friend group. But if I had it, I look back now and I'm really grateful that she forced me to do that because it kept me active. I understand the game now. I know how to kick a ball. I understand the concepts. I feel like it probably helped me athletically. But she has stories about, and now granted, and this takes into account other things too. Both of my mom and my stepdad worked full time. They didn't home till 6 p.m. Most nights I was a latchkey kid. I would come home and have to be home by myself from the time I was in late elementary school on. And so if they let me quit soccer, the whole argument of well, you don't have to do soccer, but you have to do something. But how they didn't have the bandwidth to help me find that something that I liked more than soccer. And so for them, it was nope, you're just going to continue to do this because you need to do something. And when I was younger than early elementary school, my mom tried taking me to dance, taking me to gymnastics, and every single thing I would fight and kick and scream and not want to do it. So she just got to the point where she was like, you're doing this and that's what we're doing and have a nice life, But I'm actually like appreciative of that now. So it's kind of like, if she'd have just let me quit, that wouldn't have been good either.
I was smiling when you were saying that because we're different people, right? You're
Yeah.
like, well, I'm happy she forced me to do that, and when I hear someone forced me to do something, I'm like, nope.
Don't take away my freedoms.
You do not tell me what to do.
But you're a kid. Like, so
Yeah,
how much
it's
of that
different.
is.
It's different when you're a kid, but I still don't. I don't know. It's not a big deal, but
Yeah,
I'm
no, but
not going to
it's a
force my
very
kids to do things that
interesting.
they don't want to do.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation though, because it ties into so many things, and I think that there are so many things to consider, like the parents' ability and bandwidth to help navigate all of that with their kid is one factor. Like if your kid, being home alone and they literally just need an activity to keep them busy, do they need activity? Do they need to be doing something physical? And then it's like, well, how often are they quitting? Are you finding stuff that like works for them and stuff? And in this situation too with her, like, so my son and I are still doing it and he definitely does not want to quit, so we're for the long haul. But this is like what we told her is this is the only opportunity you're going to have to learn like a country's sport in the country. Like taekwondo is uniquely Korean, and this would be a really cool opportunity. But she did have that opportunity. She did taekwondo in Korea, so getting her black belt in Korea doesn't necessarily have to be the goal. She still did it. But I don't want her to look back and be like, man, I wish you would have pushed me a little further. Like I could have gone beyond. But at that point, it's like, well, I'm not going to force you. We did push you. We pushed you a lot. We had lots of conversations about this. And it got to the point where, we weren't going to fight it. So it is like a balance. Like, how much do you push?
Yeah. I don't know. I just remember my mom used to make me do all different things that I didn't want to do. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I just want to play basketball. Like, send me to basketball camp. That's what I want. She had me try horseback riding lessons and singing lessons and piano lessons and all these things that I didn't enjoy. I didn't like any of them. And my heart wasn't in any of them. I just wanted to play basketball. That's what I
But
wanted.
did you end up being able to play basketball?
Yeah. So why do I have to do all these other things?
Like, can you look back now and do you have any appreciation for your mom attempting to give you a wide net of things? Like if she'd have just put you in basketball and never exposed you to any of those things, how does she know you're not like a piano brilliant, piano player? You know what I mean?
I appreciate the sentiment, but I would have just rather her send me to basketball camp.
Yeah.
Because that was my thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
I still feel like if you're good at something, then
Mm-hmm.
you need to, what's the word? I can't think of words.
Like develop that, like just lean in and.
Lean into that thing. And being well-rounded is great, but you're never going to be good at anything. You're never going to be great at anything if you're
Mm-hmm.
doing 500 different things.
See, and I guess in that scenario too, you did know that there was something you really loved and enjoyed, so that
Yeah.
makes it easy. I know for some parents, their kid just doesn't want to do anything, and
Yeah.
that's when you're like, you got to do something,
Yeah. And,
So it's
and if
hard.
my mom's listening, I'm sorry, Mom. I love you. I don't mean anything negative.
Yeah, I mean, soccer was never like there's so many other things that I look back and I'm like, man, I really wish I could dance. Like, I love to dance now. Why didn't you put me in dance? And she's like, are you
Yeah.
freaking kidding me? Like,
Yeah.
you don't remember like kicking and screaming in the room when I signed you up for dance lessons and me losing $120 for the month because I signed you up and you refused to go. And so
Yeah.
it's just funny because when you look back, it's like, I recognize that she did the best she could and made the best decision she could. And yeah.
Well, it's funny too because I don't mean this is going to sound braggadocious. I'm good at
Braggadocious.
yeah, I'm good at a lot of things. So when she put me in piano, the girl that was teaching me in like 2 classes, she's like, I don't know what to do with you anymore. You're way ahead of all my students. She's like, have you taken piano lessons before? And I was like, no. She's
That's
like,
so
well,
cool.
so she's like, well, let's just have fun then. And then, so, I didn't last in the piano. Like, I can't play the piano now. And then the singing lessons, I think I told you this story. where
Were
the
you
woman,
just so good? Is it like
which
Mariah
I
Carey
can't,
came out of
like
your
I
throat?
like I
I
can't
can't
sing
even
now.
imagine that.
Like I can't sing now because you have to like consistently do it, right? And so I don't know how many lessons it was. It wasn't very long, and she's like, I think you're ready. I'm like, ready for what?
For
To
what?
to sing in front of people. And I'm
That's
like,
not happening ever.
I'm like, no. She's like, yes, you have to. You have to sing in front of people. That's going to get you to that next step. I don't want to be at the next step. My mom forced me to come here. Like, this
Oh my
isn't my
gosh. That is
like,
so
I would love
funny.
to be able to sing. Like, I like to be able to do that. It wasn't, I think that's the reason I didn't like that as much, is because of this person trying to force me to
Mm-hmm.
sing in front of people, because I do think that would be cool to be able to sing. I admire people who have really nice voices and can sing, but it not, I can't even talk to people and introduce myself. You think I'm going to go up there and be like belting out? She wanted me to sing Heart and Soul. Like this
The
old school
visual of
song.
you, like, oh my gosh, I can't. That's so funny. That was one of the things with my mom too. Like I have a natural musical ability. I get it from my dad, and my dad is like a musician. And so she always says like, "You're an aficionado." And I was like, just because I taught myself how to play chopsticks on the keyboard and can like pluck out a Beastie Boys song, like
Yeah.
doesn't mean I'm an aficionado. But she was convinced I'm like a musical genius. So
Yeah.
she always was pushing me to do music lessons, and I did here and there sporadically. But and she still will say like, I just wish you would have, you could have been. And I'm like, but I'm not that interested in it. So just because you're good at something also doesn't necessarily mean you're interested in it.
Yeah.
Like I kind of
Yeah,
still enjoy
exactly.
having a slight musical ability, but it doesn't mean I want to be like performing or,
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
it's very funny. And that
Yes.
with Camila too, there are clear that, and so again, back to that, there are clear interests that she has. So it's kind of like that balance. She loves gymnastics. She loves to dance and perform. She got into theater this past summer. So when we go back to San Antonio, she does want to take music lessons, not music lessons, voice lessons, stage presence. She wants to get back into dance and theater. And so there are these things that she has a very high interest in. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was like, okay, well,
and
that's what
and
we'll do.
and and I think it's a good idea to try different things, like have your kids try different things. So my mom
Mm-hmm.
putting me in the different things was probably a good idea. It's just I kind of already knew.
Yeah.
I
Well, and
kind of have a
self
little
defense too, that
attitude.
was part of it. Like it would be nice for her to know a couple of techniques, and not even techniques because she's tiny. So even if she has techniques, somebody's going to overpower her, but more so the ability to put yourself outside of your comfort zone and face a little bit of adversity. And like she was petrified of sparring, and she asked, I only want to spar my brother. Like I don't want to spar anybody else. But having to then spar somebody else and that mental toughness of like, okay, I have to, like that was actually really, we saw a lot of growth in her. So we're really glad that she had that opportunity and experience to come outside of herself a little bit and do something she wasn't used to. But then yeah, it's that line of like, well, we don't want to push it to the point where she has negative memories of this experience. We want her to be proud. I earned my orange belt in Korea in Taekwondo. Like that's pretty cool. Not like, mother effer, that whole year was torture because he forced me to go and do things I didn't want to do. And yep. And then of course selfishly me and her brother do it, so it's like a very easy thing. Like she still has to come, that's the thing too, she still has to come, she just doesn't participate, she has to sit and do her
Yeah.
homework. So that's what I told her too. I was like, you still have to come, right? Because we go and Poppy's at work and you just have to be there. She's like, that's okay, because she likes the kids and the environment. She does gymnastics
Yeah.
on the mat, and so she's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
But anyway,
cool.
that's my update.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good convo though, because it's always something I'm thinking. I was literally Googling, like, when do you let a child quit? Because I want to do the right thing.
And the answer is always, I mean that one isn't that, but the answer is almost always balance. You
Always,
know,
yeah.
it's like don't force them to do too many things, but you probably want them to, branch out.
Yep. Cool. What you got for me in the health and fitness space?
You know how people say, and you might disagree. I think we've had a topic like this before. People say that it's 80-20, and that it's 80% diet and
Yeah.
20% exercise.
Yeah.
And I sort of disagree with that,
Right.
especially when it comes to long term. So diet probably matters more if you're trying to lose weight. If you're trying to lose weight, diet is going to matter more. So things like Ozempic and all of that can help you lose weight. But long term, I feel like it's 50-50, and exercise matters just as much as diet when it comes to maintaining your weight. Um, that's why I've always said, and I know I haven't said this in a while, but I talk about making your targets bigger, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you're throwing a dartboard or throwing a dart at a dartboard and you're trying to hit the bullseye every time, it's going to be a lot harder than if you're just trying to hit the dartboard itself. And making your calorie targets bigger can be very helpful, which you do that through, strength training and activity and all of that. And and it helps you get your protein too. It makes your protein easier to get too, because
When you have more calories.
if you're trying to get 120 grams of protein and you're eating 2,000 calories, it's going to be a lot easier than if you're only eating 1,500 calories. So it just makes things a lot easier.
I agree with
And
you. I
you
don't
agree with
disagree
me on
with
that?
you. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I was going to say when you first open it up, I was thinking in my mind, I do agree at long term. I think more so where the 80-20 in terms of diet and exercise really matters is, like you said, if somebody's trying to achieve an aesthetic result, like more like immediate, like I want to lose 5 pounds or I want to lose 20 pounds or I want to become more blah, blah, blah. Like 80% of their aesthetic results in that moment are going to come from diet.
Yeah. Yeah. And when it comes to health, I think it's 50-50 too, because your body will adapt to what the environment that you're in. So if you're sitting all day long, you're telling your body that you don't need the ability to move, right? So if you're not getting any steps in, you're losing the ability to get steps in. And it's really important to be able to do that, especially as we age. And the same thing with strength training and all of that. We always talk about how important that is. So for health, I think it's just as important. That's why I don't like that's why things like Ozempic I think are great tools, but you need to do them the right way. Otherwise, I feel like it actually is it's going to be have negative effects on some people.
Yeah, it's funny because I have an in-person client whose ankle mobility is fine, but it could be better. And one of her ankles, like the mobility in one of her ankles, is more restricted than the other to like a very obvious degree. And we were joking because we live in Korea. She was like, "Yeah, I mean, you don't see these Koreans like they don't have this problem at all. They can pop down and sit in that squat." And I was like, "Yeah, but if you think about it, it's the reason because they've been doing it their whole lives."
Mm-hmm.
And I would definitely argue that you might see that change as in like more modern times, but a lot of South Korea is still like a lot of farmers and a lot of people that you will literally be driving down the road and you'll see people who are 40, 50, 60 squatting in their garden for hours at a time, seeding or picking things, and they're just in a full on squat, like totally comfortable.
Yeah.
And it's because their body has always done that. And so this goes into for the argument for it's so important for kids to be active because you're sending the signal to a growing body. This is what my life is going to be like. And
Yeah.
so these are the things I need to be able to maintain as I grow into my adult body.
Yeah. And that was part of my next point was a lot of people blame it on food. The reason why we are so overweight is our food. And it definitely plays a role. And it's obviously like if you ate mostly whole foods, you would probably not have a weight problem. But I think inactivity is up there with it, because when I think of my childhood, the food I ate, like I'm a 90s kid. I don't know what kind of food
For
you
sure.
ate, but we had like gushers and fruit by the foot and those squeeze it
Kool-Aid.
thingies,
Just
Kool-Aid,
guzzling.
Sunny D. I don't even know. Just so many things. I remember I used to go to my dad's house. My mom and my dad are separated, so on the weekends I'd go visit my dad, and he was a little more relaxed with the rules, and they had a lot more snacks there. And I used to make myself this big sundae, like every weekend, like full of ice cream and bananas and sprinkles and caramel on top and cherries and just I don't know how many calories that was, but I used to just be able
It
to
was a
eat that.
lot.
And I wasn't a fat kid, I moved around a lot. Like I was active and I was outside running around and playing sports all the time. And I could eat like that. crazy amount of calories and all that crazy food because I was so active. And kids nowadays are not nearly as active. And they're always on their phones and video games and all of that. And I think that plays a big role in that also.
Definitely. Or if you look at the chart for your TDEE,
Mm-hmm.
your NEAT takes up like 70% of that. So that's basically how active you are, how much you're moving, right?
Yeah.
So that right there kind of proves that point too, is that really the amount of activity that you're just generally doing, even if it's not intense activity, just how
Mm-hmm.
regularly active your body is, that's like any time not sitting in a chair, is
Yeah.
contributing to an elevated metabolic rate, which
Yeah.
means you are elevating you're widening your targets, like you said, and that person can then eat more. So if you're constantly running around, that's why kids in general tend to move more. Like I remember going on a hike with my nephew, and he was like, I think he was like 15 at the time, so definitely like teenager. But we were hiking to a castle in Germany, and when we got there, he made a comment of like, "Oh man, I have like 17,000 steps." Like he was wearing a watch, and I was like, "Oh yeah," like because I walked the same distance, so I was like,
Yeah.
"Yes, 17." And I looked at my thing, and it was like 10,000. It was something
Yeah.
ridiculously different, and I was like, "What
He
the
took
heck?
3 steps for your one.
Yes, he was running up the sides of the hills, and he was like doing this the whole time, and so
Yeah.
it was very evident that he was
Mm-hmm.
burning more, and so then he can then eat more, and then have that be that cyclical pattern.
Yeah, and so that brings me to, there was a study done that actually was done on energy flux, which has to do with how much food you're eating and activity. So it's basically like adding them together. So low energy flux would mean that you are eating low calorie, but you're not very active. Moderate would be you're in the middle. High would be you eat a lot of food, but you also are super active. And there was a study done on this, and what they found is that it was over 3 years. It wasn't like the best study in the world because it's over 3 years. They can't be in a lab the whole time or intervening or anything like that. But what they found over the 3 years were that the people with the high energy flux were the leanest. So the people that
Yep.
ate the most food but were also very active were the most leanest. And they took out people who were, you know, either they took out people who were eating a lot but not moving a lot, or the vice versa, like that. So it was people who were trying to maintain their weight. And yeah.
Well, I mean, you can do anecdotal as well. Like if you look around, and not that I encourage you to do this, but we all do it. You look around and you see people who are like body goals. Like, man, that person is athletic. They are lean. Like, I wish I could look like, because when you look at that person, it's not just that they're skinny. It's
Mm-hmm.
that you can tell that they're fit. That's a different
Mm-hmm.
kind of like
Yeah.
lean, right?
Yeah.
And you can look at them and be like, man, I wish I was like that, or I looked like that, or you just admire them in general. Guaranteed, if you go up and talk to this person, they eat a ton. This is
Yeah.
not somebody who's eating rabbit food. Like these are people that
No.
eat a lot because they're eating a lot. They probably eat more than you because they're
Mm-hmm.
eating to support their activity level. And you and I have talked about before how a lot of times we're the ones in the room or at the
Yeah.
Thanksgiving dinner table that are filling up their plates 3 and 4 times. Like we can out eat everybody in the room, yet we're the fittest ones in the room as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was in Bill Campbell's research review, and he gave
Uh,
his opinion on it. And he was saying that he's doing more research on this, and because he's getting really interested in this, because he has, people come to his lab all the time that are fit people, and a lot of them are women because he does a lot of his stuff on women.
Love
and
that.
um and anytime he asked them, like the ones that are really lean, like how do you stay so fit, and the answer was never, I don't eat a lot of food. It was always they always were very active, strength trained multiple times per week, and maybe even some cardio, and just always moving and active. But he said none of them, very few of them even paid attention to diet that much. It was just like they just ate. They didn't really they didn't restrict their calories, they didn't whatever, because they didn't have to.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, a lot of
Right?
the most fit people, they're not people who are tracking every macro.
No,
Hmm.
no. All right, so that was topic number one.
I love that. Wait, that was one. That wasn't one, two, and three all wrapped up together.
Mm-mm.
Okay,
Topic number two is I
you're
saw.
so good at transitions.
I know, I know, not as good as you. You're the master.
I'm the master.
You're the master at transitions. Topic number 2 was or is, I saw a post on Instagram. This one girl posted who's a trainer, and she got so much hate for this post. And I kind of agree with her, and I guess that's why it's controversial, because if she's getting hate and I'm agreeing with her, then I'm probably going to get some hate. So I don't know if you're going to agree with this or not. But she posted something, and it was like the average person gets 3 to 4,000 steps a day. And there's, and like, we were I don't remember the whole post, but we are so sedentary that a 15-minute walk is considered exercise now. And we really need to raise the bar and try to do better and not try to do the bare minimum was her post. And she got so much hate.
I
And
already know why you agree with her.
Yeah.
Because you are not the like, okay, good job for your efforts person. You are like
No.
these, you're clapping. You are the suck it up and do it person.
Yeah.
So you're like, yeah, exactly. Because the reality is she's correct, but her delivery, ignores all of these people who are just trying to make time for a 15-minute walk in order to elevate themselves. And so.
And she put in the caption, I'm not talking about people who are disabled. I'm not talking about people who, anything like that. It was basically, if you can move. Right. If you have the ability, do it. And I agree, because I feel like it's tough love. It's what you need to hear sometimes. And the whole fluffy thing isn't always helpful. Like, it might spare your feelings, but science doesn't care about your feelings. Getting steps in it's going to be better for you if you do that. And we live in this society where everyone gets so offended, and everyone is just like, I don't know, like, so soft. so soft.
I hear you. And like, again, like we agree, but maybe like the delivery, and I don't even necessarily disagree with that post. Like, I actually think that's true. I do think more people need that tough love and the reality of it. Like, there's a balance to somebody, let's say somebody who is literally very sedentary, and for them, a 15-minute walk every day is their activity. And that is good, because they do need to do that. They need that softness, like, hey, this is okay, and this is enough right now, because you need to be doing this consistently in order to raise the bar. But they also need to know that that's not enough long term. Like, they also need the tough love of, this is step 1, and we need to reach like the top of the ladder at some point. This isn't, and I think that it's just a balance between the two, depending on the person, because some people get so overwhelmed by all the things they see online that they're quote unquote supposed to be doing. I could, like, I guess, relate it to meal prep. Like, I have a current client who does nothing positive with her nutrition, because in her mind, she's still so thinking that, like, if she doesn't have all those black meal prep containers laid out every Sunday, then she's not doing well. And just trying to get her to like eat protein with breakfast, she's like, but that's not enough. I'm like, you haven't been doing anything. Like, that is what you need to do. That is step 1. But the reality is, she needs the tough love to know that you need to improve your nutrition, but you don't need to be overwhelmed by this like top level tier thing.
Yeah, that was the other thing I was going to say is, as a trainer, coach, you have to meet people where they're at. So if someone came to me and they were only getting 2,000 steps, I'm not going to be like, you need to get 10. I would work up to that. But same exact thing. Know that that is the bare minimum now, and we're going to raise that bar, and you're not going to stay there. You have to make improvements. You have to challenge yourself in order to improve. You can't just...
Right. And I definitely find that, like, if I had to say one is more just objectively correct or not versus like just pure opinion, I would say that that's just, in my experience, that's the more correct way, because that my natural, like where I naturally fall, is a little bit more like soft and all that stuff. But I've learned over the years that even with people that think they need that or want that, it still doesn't really work. So if somebody we're working on getting the bare minimum, let's say a sedentary person getting a 15-minute walk, and they're supposed to be doing it every day, and they get it in 3 days that week, I can respond with, hey, good job. We did 3. Now let's do 4. That's like the more
Exactly.
soft response, like, hey, great, you did something. At least it was not nothing. Let's do
Yeah.
4 next week. That actually doesn't work as well as just being like, what, obviously the delivery still has to be respectful, but essentially the message is, what the heck, 3 days out of
Yeah.
7 is not even half. Like, this needs to improve. Not let's do 4 next week. No, we're doing 7 15-minute walks next
Yeah.
week. Even if one of those walks has to be 30 minutes
Yeah.
because you didn't get it in one day, you need to get in this amount. That works better
It,
for them.
and I've learned as a coach that I don't treat everyone the same, just like you
Mm-hmm.
do with your kids. There's certain kids, there's one child you have to treat a little different than the other child. Something works on one that doesn't work on the other. So there are certain people that I know that I don't need to do that. Like,
Right.
I just, like, they are hard enough on themselves, and I know that next week they're going to do it anyway. You know, I don't need to push them the same way as
Right.
some other clients where I'm like, you paid me.
Yeah.
Like,
Hello.
what did you pay me for? I
Yep.
can't do it for you.
Yep.
But yeah, and the other thing is that she wasn't saying that everyone needs to get 15,000 steps.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a balance, because that's wrong too, because there's people out there that overwhelm you with, you need to, like, the people that are like, you can't have this food or this food or this food, and, you know, make things too complicated. That's a whole other story. But the fact that people, basically she was saying people want like a participation trophy just for like
Yeah.
doing the bare minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it is in that
Yeah.
realm, and I have I'm possibly controversial opinion, but I
Mm-hmm.
think you might agree with me on it. I think that elevators are only for people who are disabled and can't use the stairs, or you have some other kind of reason why you physically cannot take the stairs. You have a baby stroller with you, you
Yeah.
are lugging, something on, you
Yeah.
literally need that space, and you need, or the where you're going is on the 30th floor. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, but those outlying
Yeah.
circumstances are the only reason I think people should be using elevators. And I feel the same way about electric scooters. When I see kids on electric scooters,
Uh,
I'm like, are you kidding me? That's your outdoor toy? No, use your leg. you know? You know that feeling when you've been scootering on one leg and your quad is burning? Like, my
yeah.
kid's gonna feel that lactic acid buildup in their quad. They're not, so they've been asking me for an electric scooter. I'm like, I mean, and the argument is, well, at least they're outside. But again, like, we're bare minimum. Like, no, go outside
Yeah.
anyway and walk and use your legs.
Yeah. When Caleb has one of his doctor's appointments, it's on the fifth floor,
That's
third,
walkable.
fourth, fifth, something. I think it's the fifth floor. Yeah, it is. So sometimes we'll race.
Yep, that's
So
what we
when
do.
do you do that too? So Wayne and Caleb will take the elevator, and then I'll go up the stairs
Yep.
and see who gets there first. And I usually win. And then Caleb noticed that I was winning all the time, so then he would race me up the stairs instead of going in the elevator, because he's like,
Yeah.
no, it's faster.
I
Yeah.
will say, like, half the time my husband will, because he does value activity and all that stuff. So he will, but he doesn't feel as strongly about elevators. Like, I literally get mad when I see the people waiting in line for the elevator. I'm like, this is what's wrong with society. And so I immediately go to the stairs, and yeah, I'll like make it a race. And sometimes he'll come and then we'll just race each other up the stairs, which
Yeah.
is fun, but he won't. He just lags behind. But the kids do. They totally engage. But
Yeah.
if he's going to be on the elevator, I'm like, suckers, like, my
Yeah, I'm
body's
gonna beat
faster
you.
than technology. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. And I don't like elevators. They freak me out, and I get sick on them.
Claustrophobia. Oh, you really?
Yeah, I get sick. The movement. I easily get motion sickness. So that was when it lands, and then it kind of, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But they freak me out. Like, I'm not like claustrophobic where when I'm on it, like, I'm freaking out. But if I ever got stuck in one,
Yep.
I would freak out.
And heaven forbid it's with other people.
I know.
Like, that's the worst part for you.
Like, oh, this stranger over there.
I'd be like, hallelujah, there's 4 strangers in here. Like, we have the entirety of everybody's life to cover. Let's go. If I was stuck alone, that would panic me. If I was stuck
Yeah.
alone, not because of a safety thing. Like, I know that eventually I'll get out. This whole building's not going to collapse. But the thought of being stuck with nothing to do except think and be still terrifies me.
Yeah, no, honestly, I would actually rather there be people in there.
Really? I was
As
just
long
about
as
to ask, would you rather be stuck
No.
Safety aside, you know you will escape, and you know, let's say you know it'll be in 3 hours. Somehow you know you'll be stuck for only 3 hours. Would you rather be in an elevator with four strangers or alone?
If I know it's going to be 3 hours, you see, it depends on who the strangers are. Are they cool strangers, ones I
You
could
don't
strike up a conversation with?
random mixture.
Because I don't know. Because sometimes it depends on the person. If I'm in there with some weirdo, I'll be like, this is torture. They keep talking to me about their toy trains, and I don't want to listen to it.
But you have three other personalities to balance it. It's not you and one other possibly weirdo stranger. You
Oh,
have a
okay.
mix.
Then it's probably okay because there'll probably be another one that I lock eyes with and look at them like, are you
What the
listening to
hell's wrong
this?
with Joe over here? His trains.
Yeah. And we
Something's
have a
going on.
moment.
So you'd pick the four strangers?
Yeah, I would pick the four strangers.
I would have guessed that you would have chosen to be alone.
Yeah. No. I'm an introvert. I like being alone, but I don't like being bored and lonely either.
Yeah. Hey, everybody listening, comment below. Would you prefer to be, you know, it's going to be 3 hours. You know that your safety is not compromised. Mm-hmm. Would you rather be stuck alone or with four random strangers?
The point where you said you know it's going to be 3 hours, that makes me lean a little bit more towards being alone. If I didn't know the amount of time, definitely.
Yeah.
With the four strangers.
Yeah. Makes sense. Have you ever done the thing? Have you ever asked Wayne, or do you have your own thought about the bear versus the man in the woods? Did you ever do that or talk about it? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Like if I would rather be alone with a man or a bear?
Yeah, like if you were in the woods
Uh-huh.
and came upon either a strange man or a strange bear.
No.
No what?
It's funny how many... No, I haven't done that.
Oh, okay. No, I choose neither.
What type of bear is it? Is it a grizzly bear or a black bear?
That's a really great question.
Because if it's a grizzly bear, I'm picking the man.
Well, my friend Rachel said, because when I originally asked her, I said, you're lost in the woods. And then the second time I said it, I said, you're in the woods. And she was like, wait, you said lost last time. And I was like, why does that matter? She was like, because if I'm lost, a bear is not going to be able to get me out. Mm-hmm. But so I would want the man, because I'd rather the man would maybe have a map or know how to get out. But, because she's not, but if I'm just in the woods, I don't know. It was like, maybe the answer changes. And I don't think it's lost. I think you're just in the woods. Would you rather come upon a strange man or a bear?
It's crazy how many women said a bear. And honestly, I would have thought I picked the man, but I'm just picturing myself walking in the woods with this strange man with a beard, and he's a little sketchy looking.
I saw a reel the other day because this little trend is kind of over. Like, we're not really seeing it much anymore. But I saw a reel that was, I think it was like 2 or 3 guys that would rotate. And the person holding the camera was intended to be like the woman walking through the woods. So it was that perspective, like walking down a trail. And the headline or the thing on the screen was like, making sure that every woman I run into knows that I'm not a threat. And so it's like you're walking down the trail and then a guy passes you, and it was like they were just doing different things, like, oh, hey, girlfriend, or like, oh man, you want to watch it down there, like just different things that they could say, ways that they could say hello to make sure that the person automatically knew they weren't a threat. And it made me laugh, because it really does depend on, like, the man you're imagining is very different than maybe like, know. And I definitely obviously believe that most men are good people.
Yeah, I agree. It's just, why is this weirdo man? It's in the woods, but why am I in the woods? I don't know.
Why is he a weirdo man? Aren't we on a trail? Why isn't he just hiking? Why are you there by yourself, weirdo?
I know.
Why is he a weirdo, but you're not?
If I'm thinking, like, if I'm hiking, if I think about it that way, if I'm like on a hiking trail and I'm in the woods and I come across a man, that's fine.
Feels normal.
It feels normal. He's just hiking. If I'm walking in the woods, I think it depends on how I'm picturing this in my head. If I'm walking in the woods randomly,
a very good point.
and I'm not on a trail. Maybe I am lost. I don't know. I'm just in the middle of the woods randomly, and this guy comes up to me. I'm like, "Why are you here?"
Yes, that context really matters here.
It does.
And I don't actually know if more women said they'd prefer the bear, but 100% more men said they would prefer their female partner happen upon a bear instead of a man.
Oh, really? I didn't
Yeah,
know
it was
that.
mostly that men were, and I asked my husband and he was like,
That's
bear.
crazy.
Yeah. I
Oh,
was like,
really?
really?
I didn't know that. I thought it was. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So I just find that very interesting.
I'll have to ask Wayne that question and come back to
Ask
you.
him. Have you asked him the Roman Empire question?
Yeah, he does not think about the Roman Empire at all. He's like, "What?" I asked him that, and he's like, "What are you talking about?"
I would think you would be the more Roman Empire thinking person of the two of you.
Yeah, no, I don't think about the Roman Empire.
But like if one of you was going to analyze that, wouldn't that be you?
Oh yeah, most likely.
I asked Donovan that question thinking this is stupid. Why is I don't understand why this is a thing that's going around, but let's
Yeah.
try. I was like, "Hey, how often do you think about the Roman Empire?" And he was like, "Multiple times a day." Why? And I was like, "What?
Why?
Multiple times a day? Why?"
Why?
He was like,
What?
"Well, definitely every time I use the bathroom." And I was like, "What?" Because the Romans had plumbing, and it's like mind blowing how they had plumbing like that
Yeah, that is
far
crazy.
back. So that's why. But I just was, yeah, it was comical.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway, I don't know where we, but
One
continue.
more one more
Topic
topic
3. Okay.
is okay. Getting on that bare minimum point, right?
Bare minimum, but
What what is? Oh,
because
I
the
get it.
bear and the
What?
man.
Yeah.
Okay.
It took me a minute. I'm like,
Continue.
what? What is that?
You're
What are
like,
you doing?
uh-huh.
What is your? What are your non-negotiables? So, if you are doing the bare minimum, what does that look like? So, and not daily, because daily, things are going to change. But let's say you don't really have a lot of time right now. You don't have a lot of energy to put in towards fitness. What are the things that are your like non-negotiables that you always do anyway?
Yeah, it's funny because I don't think of them as non-negotiables. It's not something that it's more so these are the things that I just do because if I don't, I literally feel like absolute garbage. And I'll
Mm-hmm.
kind of feel like garbage anyway if I'm completely off my routine, if I don't get any structured workouts in or if I'm just like overeating or eating a lot of crap, I'll feel like garbage. But I would say the things that like without fail, like even if I'm on vacation or even if I'm like sick, like
Mm-hmm.
I have to move in some way. So
Mm-hmm.
walking. If I'm not getting in a lot of movement or exercise, like I'll probably insert walks in places I wouldn't normally. Like I'll be the person that's like, all right, we have done jack crap all day. So after dinner, I'm like going for a really long walk. Is anybody joining me? Or eating vegetables is a big one too, like produce. Like I'm always
Mm-hmm.
like seeking out produce and making sure that I'm eating that stuff. And again, it's not because I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to. It's more so that's just what I want. And that's what makes me feel better.
Yeah,
And then drinking a lot of water. Drinking water, eating produce, and just moving in some way.
I like that.
How about you?
I'm thinking of this question as not like if I'm on vacation or something like that, but just like if I'm going through a season of life. Some seasons I'm on it, and
I might have a different answer for that. Go
yeah.
ahead.
So I didn't ask it very well.
No,
We can
so
come
it's
back to you.
because it's kind of like how do you imagine that, it's
Yeah,
interpretation. But go ahead.
yeah. So yeah, if I'm on it, I might be doing 10 times more than this. But if I am in a season where maybe I'm not on it as much, the
Mm-hmm.
things that I still do without fail is get enough protein in. I never average less than 100 grams of protein per day. It's usually more than that. Like even when I'm doing the minimum, it's usually more than 100. But that's usually like the lowest it'll go.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I still strength train and I still work out at least 3 days a week. I rarely would ever go less than that, but I might not be pushing as hard
Mm-hmm.
in the workouts. Um, and activity. Yeah, I always get 8 to 10,000 steps
Mm-hmm.
average. Not every day. Like some days I might get 7 or something, but the average for the week will be somewhere in between 8 to 10,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say
Those are
mine
mine.
is very similar. So in those seasons of life where I'm just not as in it or things are very busy, it's at least 3 workouts, structured workouts a week.
Yeah.
Maybe some weeks are more, a couple weeks might be less, but 3 is really, if it drops below 3, that's when I really feel like something's off.
Yeah.
And again, like you said, they don't have to be hour long. They can even be me just like half-assing it and doing half
Yeah.
of it or not
Doing
pushing
something.
myself, but it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't say I'm as good at naturally at protein as you are. I still, it's very easy for me to get 100 or more, but if I'm off of it, my portion sizes do tend to be smaller and I'm not
Mm-hmm.
prioritizing it as much, but I am definitely still getting protein and some sort of like produce at every meal.
Yeah.
And movement. Yeah, I mean, being generally active for sure, but I'm usually not, when I'm off of it, I'm not really tracking my steps. So I know that they're lower than normal, but I'm still just somebody that like craves being active. So I
Yeah.
still do it, but yeah. Yeah, but those 3 workouts a week, that's really for me like my bare minimum.
Yeah. And it's not even so you don't really need to do a lot to maintain.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much less than you have to do
Mm-hmm.
to, you know, grow. But so 3 workouts is plenty to maintain. But it's more of the mental the mental
Mm-hmm.
benefits of that. Same thing with the steps and the activity. I feel crappy if I'm not moving
Mm-hmm.
mentally and physically. You just feel like
Mm-hmm.
crap. And the same thing with the food. So it's all more like how I'm going to feel more than
Mm-hmm.
trying to make progress at that time.
Yeah, well, when you live this kind of lifestyle, you really discover what it feels like to actually feel really good.
Yeah.
And feeling anything less than that is just misery.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know I've told you the story before about we used to do a lot of road trips to go visit my husband's family in El Paso when we lived in San Antonio. It's like a 7.5 hour drive. And we would go like almost every like long weekend, just multiple times throughout the year. We'd go on this road trip, enough that we started to see patterns and the kids started to see patterns, because on the way there they feel fine, no car sickness, no naps, like energy. But on the way back, every single time they feel like crap. They're fighting in the backseat of the car, they're low energy, their stomachs hurt, they're falling in and out of sleep the whole time. And there was this one time where my son said, and I think he was like 7 at the time, he was like, Mommy, why every time we go to El Paso, I feel great, but on the way back, I feel like really bad. And I feel sick and I feel tired and I feel grumpy. And we stopped and analyzed, well, think about what you're doing that whole time we're there. And like, granted, that's on us, but we kind of let loose. We let you stay up late
Yeah.
with your cousins. You're not drinking as much water. You're really not eating like you're eating chips and pancakes and, gummies all day. And so when we pointed that out, he actually got like real serious. So now whenever we're in scenarios, but especially in El Paso, he's like, Mommy, I need my water bottle. Or like, yes, I need some fruit. I need some vegetables. And when we tell them they can't spend the night at their cousins, and why not? I really want to. You need your sleep. Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. No, guys, I'll see you tomorrow. Like, very much like
Yeah.
he doesn't want to feel that way. And
Yeah.
it's just so funny because, like, yeah, when you realize what it feels like to functioning on all cylinders,
Yeah.
feeling less than that is like, I know that there's some real simple things I can do to make myself not feel this crappy.
Yeah, definitely.
So the last thing I wanted to touch on was coffee in the morning.
I don't have any
Oh,
thoughts on coffee.
oh,
You could talk about it if you want.
I do want to talk about it
Okay, go ahead.
because a lot of people drink coffee and a lot of people drink coffee in the morning. And there's things going around that say you shouldn't have coffee in the morning, that you need to eat before you have coffee in the morning, and because of cortisol. And I don't think it's as talked about right now, but I posted a reel the other day that was actually an old reel that I made back when this was, I feel like it was like maybe 6 to 9 months ago. A lot of people are talking about this on social media, like you need to eat and drink water before you have any coffee. And so I made a joking reel about it, like, oh, here's a crazy nutrition fact. Did you know that if you and I like described basically, eating and drinking and waiting and putting off your morning coffee until like an hour, that it removes all joy that you have left? So it was like this joke.
Hmm.
And most people like thought it was funny and laughed and stuff like that. But I did have one friend that was like, well, I will say that like I really feel like when I have coffee before I eat, like I can feel my cortisol levels like really high. And I
Yeah.
just feel better when I don't. And my response to that was, every single thing that's out there, if it doesn't make you feel good, like don't do it. Like there's always that individual, like dairy is not bad for you. But when you eat dairy, if you don't feel good because the way you personally respond to it, then yeah, don't eat it. But that doesn't mean that everybody should like not eat dairy, right? So it's the same thing. If you don't feel good when you have coffee on an empty stomach, then don't drink coffee on an empty stomach. But the fear mongering of we shouldn't be drinking coffee on an empty stomach before, we wake up because of cortisol is not accurate, because the reality is, and this is, I said this in the comment, I was like, cortisol is always high in the morning. I was like, that's normal. We wake up and we have a peak in cortisol levels. Yes, drinking caffeine increases that. So caffeine does increase cortisol, but it's an acute response. It comes back down after you digest and metabolize the caffeine, and that's the way cortisol goes. And if we're worried about cortisol, we shouldn't be worried about these things that are acute, cortisol increasers. We need to be worried about things that are chronic stressors that we're putting on our body. So if you're drinking coffee all day long, that is probably going to be something that is contributing to chronically high cortisol levels. If you're stressing all day long, if we're not sleeping well at night, if you're not exercising, if you're not eating well, like there are so many other things that people do that contribute to elevated and chronically high cortisol levels, and drinking a cup of coffee in the morning is not it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, before you started talking, I didn't know what your opinion was going to be,
Got
but I
it.
was going to say I'm pretty sure you know what mine is, which is drink the coffee.
Yeah.
Like it's not that big of a deal.
It's really not. And it's kind of like the butter thing we talked about last time. Yes, if you're drinking coffee all day long, that's probably going to contribute, especially if you have other factors going on. It's not going to be the thing that causes chronically high cortisol, but if there's, it's probably one of the factors. But the reality is, we have studies that show that around 400 milligrams of caffeine a day is really the upper limit of not having like a side of like negative side effects or health effects.
Yeah.
But if you're drinking 400 milligrams of caffeine, depending on how strong your coffee is, that could be one cup of coffee, most likely two or three. And that three is if it's a more weakly brewed cup of coffee. So that's not all day drinking coffee anyway. So again, it comes down to, if we're not drinking more than 400 milligrams of caffeine a day anyway, if we're eating a whole food diet, if we're getting sleep, if we're exercise, like all the things, like if you make sure that all of those big rocks are in place, of course you can have a morning cup of coffee before you eat. If it makes you feel jittery, that's not because your cortisol is so incredibly high. That's because caffeine has a stimulating effect on your nervous system, or that's because you maybe metabolize coffee slower. So there's different types of coffee metabolizers. I don't know if you've ever done like your DNA testing. Apparently I'm like in the middle / fast of coffee metabolizing, which is why I could drink multiple cups of coffee and still go to sleep. Whereas other people have one cup of coffee and they're like wired. So again, if coffee makes you feel bad, don't drink it. If it makes you feel bad before you eat, then don't do that. But we don't need to say, oh, can't drink caffeine in the morning because cortisol, right?
Yeah, I don't drink it because of that, because I am super I've never done testing, but my own testing, I guess.
Yeah.
Super super sensitive to caffeine. So
Yeah.
I can't have it. Like if I have a cup of coffee, even decaf coffee, because there's still a little bit of caffeine in it.
Do you drink Diet Coke or do you drink tea or anything like that? Do you have the same response?
Diet Coke, no. I don't drink soda though. Tea.
I don't drink soda or protein bars.
But tea, like, no, really, I'm not a soda person.
Nutritionally elite over here.
But tea will do that to me too. Yeah,
that's crazy. Yeah, I don't.
Green tea or something, or black tea. I drink like herbal tea instead.
Yeah. Yesterday I had 2 cups of coffee in the morning, and I had my afternoon coffee, which I always have, and then I also had a Diet Coke, which really wasn't that much because we brew our coffee pretty light. Like you can see it almost looks like strongly brewed tea. And my coffee cups that I drink out of, I don't know if you've ever seen a German Christmas market mug, but they're like half the size of regular coffee. They're these tiny little cup mugs because you're supposed to drink Glühwein out of them, and it's like alcoholic wine, so you just sip like little amounts. But I love them for my coffee because I'm that person that will like sip very slowly so it gets cold, and I'll like leave it and forget it. So when I started drinking out of these little cups, like I can have like 2 or 3 of them, and it feels so satisfying to refill it.
Yeah.
Versus having a big mug that you forget about it and it gets gross.
Yeah.
So I feel like for me, 3 cups of coffee that are miniature sized is very good. And then the Diet Coke is like 20 grams of caffeine or something. It's very small.
Oh, I mean, I never noticed when I had like Coke or something.
Yeah, but nothing. Like if anything, if I don't have the coffee, I feel bad. Like my eyes feel sticky and I feel groggy and I feel like I'm struggling to think and get through the day. And then when I have coffee, I feel just normal. But I never get jittery. I never get none of that.
I have my pre-workout that has caffeine in it, and I do it that way because I can determine the amount I put in. Mm-hmm. So otherwise I would have coffee instead of a pre-workout. Mm-hmm. But I put such a small amount in it. It's like an eighth of a serving or whatever. It's probably like 25 milligrams
of caffeine. And you feel that effect, like when it hits, you feel it?
Mm-hmm. But in a good way, not in a way where I feel crappy. And I also only do that 4 days a week. Right. So there's days where I don't have it. So on Mondays, because I don't usually do it over the weekend, on Mondays, I always feel more of an effect and feel really good. If I have too much, I'm up here. And I'm like, I don't shut up.
That's what I'm going to say to you when I get like 10 voice messages like, Laura, did you have too much of your pre-workout?
Yeah, right.
Thanks for listening. Deadlifts and Pizza Pod. Please subscribe and like and comment. Leave a 5-star review if you feel so inclined. And we'll see you next week.